I graduated from Penn Law School and I worked with drug defense. I rewrote the marijuana laws for the state of Pennsylvania at a time when people were being sentenced to 20 years in prison. And slowly but surely, I started working with people who were arrested and having legal problems in foreign countries. And as the travel insurance industry grew, and emerged quite a few years ago, I started providing this emergency legal hotline for the various companies and the assistance companies and the travel insurance companies. And that's what I do up to today. We also do subrogation work, recovering money for insurance companies. But my main thing is helping people out when they have a legal problem in a foreign country. In this present case in Turkey, there is a man who purchased drugs which he thought were legal because it had been legal until Turkey, a few months before the purchase, made it illegal. He didn't know about it. And he was arrested. He used his own credit card. He had no idea it was illegal. And he wound up getting a sentence of 20 years in prison, reduced to about 16. And because of his religious persuasion, he is being attempted forcibly converted to Islam. And when they found out his sexual orientation, they threw boiling water on him. And the situation is horrible, and it's unlikely that he will survive much longer. This is one of the most horrible cases that I'm working on at the present time. Uh, Now, there are other cases that I have been involved with less directly, and one of them I think is in Dubai. And in that case, what happened was that an individual, a man who smoked marijuana legally in the United States, went to Dubai where he was became critically ill, and in the hospital they did a blood test, and among the things it showed that he uh, had cannabis use, and actually it was a week or two before, and they arrested him for having used marijuana when it was legal, because having it in your bloodstream is illegal in many parts of the world, particularly in Dubai. And so he was released on bail ultimately, but it's very, very serious, and people have to be very much aware. Now, another case that I was involved with, uh, by coincidence, was also in Turkey, although it's a wonderful place for most people to travel. And this was quite a few years ago, where a woman on a cruise ship had, in the city of Izmir, had purchased a mask for about €6. When she got back to the cruise ship, there was an inspection, and it was determined that this might be an antiquity. How could it be for such a little bit of money? So they took her off of the cruise ship and put her into a prison, refused bail, and charged her with intentionally trying to purchase and export an antiquity. And she spent some time in jail until we were able to get her out on bail. Ultimately, she was freed. Ultimately, it wound up being a movie. And but it is very important that people know that when they are in foreign countries, that they should be extremely careful about things which ordinarily would be legal, and that means includes purchasing something at an outdoor market. So that was one of the other cases. Sometimes there are officials looking to be bribed, but in many of those cases, the bribes take place and the people are released. These are all cases where none of that worked, and it appears that the people were arrested, and if the bribe was involved, it turned out that it wasn't involved, and these were real cases. The bribery cases are quickly taken care of, and people go on their way. These are the ones where bribery is not involved. And what happens is, most of the time, there is very little chance that the people would know about the law. However, it's up to assistance companies and insurance companies to make sure that when someone's going to a country, that they know what some of these changed laws are. And the following case, one of several, happened in India. And here's what happened in that case. A doctor from Chicago with his wife went on a business trip combined with a pleasure trip to India. And because he was doing business for and trying to get Indian patients to come to his Chicago hospital, he knew that he had to remain in touch with the hospital, and he heard that that the regular cell phones didn't work well in many places in India. And so he looked and found out that the only thing that worked was satellite phones. And so he got a satellite phone, and it worked real well until he got to Kochi, India. And when he got there at the airport on his way home with his wife, he was arrested. Um, it was then that he found out that about a dozen years before, when the Islamists from Pakistan got entry to India using satellite phones so they couldn't be detected, they went on to bomb the Taj Mahal Hotel, the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel, killing hundreds of people. It was the worst terrorism in the history of that country. And so they started enforcing a law that no one who was not a citizen could use a satellite phone without taking out a license. Very difficult to get. And so there he was, being a 72-year-old physician, being ready to be taken to a hellhole jail where he probably would not have survived. But fortunately, his wife was able to call the assistance company that got me on the phone, where I was able to also get my local person in New Delhi on the phone, who made it into a triple call to get his friend from Kochi on the phone. And within a half an hour, we prevented him from being taken from the airport to the prison. And instead, arrangements were made by his wife paid $100, and he and she were able to go back to their hotel and have 2 police officers there overnight. The next morning, our lawyer was able to arrange for bail, so he was released and never got to the horrible jail. The following day, he got his passport back and went home, avoiding a 7-year wait for trial, probably death from disease and or violence. And so that was one of the cases that happened, and this has happened several times. It's not a typical thing, but it happens, and people must know about things like that when they travel abroad. And it's interesting in the cruise ship industry. What happens is that there's almost a decision made ahead of time that when cruises, which are most often in the Caribbean from Florida, that when someone is injured and is ill there, they almost always take the person back to South Florida, to Dade or Broward County, where they know that there will be a high level of care, rather than take the chance. And so those companies which decide to use someplace in Haiti or someplace in another country which is substandard, they will suffer the consequences, as if in fact their patient suffers the consequences. Hence, most people are medically evacuated, even though it might be initially more expensive. It's the proper thing to do.